I had a good friend of mine. She was like, she could see how much I was just pushing with grit, just hustle. And I kept getting sick. And she goes, Amberly, your impact is only as strong as you are healthy. And I heard that because it made me think of not just me, it made me think of the people that I want to serve. If you have a hard time taking care of yourself, if you think about how it affects the people you serve, how it affects the impact you're going to make, how it affects your children, how it affects the kind of mom or wife or partner you can be, then maybe that'll help you really do the things. But I think it's important to know what your values are and to know what it is that makes you feel good and thrive and stick to those things.
Welcome back for another episode of the Beyond the Scale podcast. Today's guest is Amberly Lago, who is a motivational speaker and the author of True Grit and Grace, Turning Tragedy into Triumph. She started her speaking career after her life was deeply altered and her world was completely changed in May 2010. While riding her motorcycle in Woodland Hills, California, she was hit by an SUV and thrown 30 feet down a busy street. Her right leg was crushed almost beyond repair. As a former professional dancer and athlete, Amberly was determined to walk again and to return to her work as a fitness trainer despite the recovery process ahead. After a lengthy hospital stay and 34 surgeries later, doctors were able to fuse her leg together despite the initial recommendation to amputate. However, shortly after, Amberly was diagnosed with a nerve disease called complex regional pain syndrome and now deals with chronic pain daily. This chronic pain has led her to develop positive, healthy ways of coping with pain and all the emotions that come with it. Her journey has motivated her to pass these methods on to others in any kind of pain. This life-altering experience inspires Amberly to continue how you can turn tragedy into triumph. This life-altering experience inspires Amberly to communicate how you can turn tragedy into triumph. So I'm excited to be sitting here with Amberly today. Welcome, Amberly, to Beyond the Scale. Amberly, thank you so much for joining me today on Beyond the Scale. I'm so excited to be sitting here with you. I had the great pleasure of connecting with you through Bryce, the CEO of FitBody. And then he also recommended I read your book, which I read, and it was just amazing. And so I'm so excited for our audience to learn about you and your story and just everything that you've been through in the last 12, 13 years.
Well, thank you so much. It's always a joy when I get to talk with you, and I feel honored to get to share with you and your audience. And so I need to call Bryce and tell him thank you again after this. So I'm grateful to be here.
Well, awesome. Well, I do want to go through your backstory so our audience has an idea of, what you went through and what your passion was at the time and how you've still been able to continue to live out your passion despite the setbacks, despite the accident. And so walk us through what happened in 2010 that just completely shook your life.
Yeah, well, you know what? Like you and like probably a lot of your listeners, fitness has always been my love. It was always kind of like my drug of choice. It's what I did that got me through trauma as a child, sexual abuse. I ran, and that made me feel better. I became, I set a record in Texas for running the fastest mile. And then I became, I was a personal fitness trainer and had my own business and employed several other trainers in the fitness industry for 26 years. And I was sponsored by Nike. It was crazy. Like if you walked in any Walgreens or CVS, and I remember the first time I saw this, that I was on the label of all of this vitamin company. And I was in Shape magazine writing articles. I was in Health magazine writing articles, and life was good. I was living in California, kind of thinking, oh, I'm living the California dream. I'm married. I've got 2 healthy kids. And I remember with my workout partner, We ran 11 miles in my best time. It was the first time I actually beat him running, and I was like on top of the world. And so I jump on my Harley and I'm headed home for a long, like a weekend. It was a holiday weekend, and cruising down Ventura Boulevard, and this SUV shoots out of a parking lot and T-bones me. So hits me, I go flying 30 feet. And I'm sliding across the asphalt on my back, and I couldn't tell what I was sliding into. And I was just thinking, oh, please, God, don't let another car hit me. And when I finally came to a stop, I looked down at my leg and it was crumbled into pieces. I only looked once. There was blood everywhere. I didn't know at the time, but my femoral artery was actually severed. And what is so crazy is one of the first thoughts I had was, oh my gosh, this can't be good. I might have to train clients on crutches for a while. Like that was my thought. And then, of course, I was screaming,
Wow.
call 911, and I got rushed to the hospital, put in induced coma. And the first thing that I learned when I got out of a coma was the doctor said I had a 1% chance of saving my leg from amputation. And my thought was, what? Okay, so 1% chance, you're saying there's a chance. Like we need to find a doctor who's going to take that chance with me. And the thing that a lot of people don't know, though, is as soon as I got the tubes out of my mouth, when you wake up out of a coma, you've got Vaseline on your eyes, you've got tubes going down your throat, you can't talk. And as soon as I got those tubes out, the first thing I did, the very first thing I did was ask for my phone, and I started calling clients. So I was being wheeled on a gurney trying to get transported to another hospital. And I'm making calls to my clients because just as important as saving my leg, a literal limb on my body, was saving my business, because it was my passion. It was also my identity. It's what I was, the main breadwinner of the family. And so it ended up taking 34 surgeries, months in the hospital, and they did save my leg. And I really had no idea when I first got out of the hospital that it would be so life-changing, that I would be out of work for a year and a half. I ended up, as hard as I tried, losing my business. I had $2.9 million worth of medical expenses. My leg was completely deformed, and I was diagnosed with a nerve disease called complex regional pain syndrome, which is dubbed the suicide disease because it's ranked highest on the pain scale and there's no known cure. And so in this journey of surviving this, near-death accident and going through all these surgeries and then losing my business and then going through extreme emotional pain, physical pain, financial pain, really, I was trying every kind of treatment, every kind of drug. I was on 73 homeopathic pills and 11 different prescription medications, and nothing was working. And I went from being this successful, incredible, the best shape of my life, doing fitness videos and fitness modeling, to I became an alcoholic, drinking every day to try to cope with the pain and numb out the pain and stuff down the feelings. And my rock bottom became the foundation in which I then climbed up one day at a time, got sober, and really learned how to be resilient and rebuild my life. And so my intention today is just to really share some of the lessons that I've learned along the way, in hopes that it will help anyone who's listening who might be struggling or might feel stuck or might feel hopeless or might have pain of any kind, that there are ways to get through adversity, and there are absolutely strategies to get through challenges and to move through pain.
Oh, that is just so impactful. And it really does have me thinking about the things that have happened in my life that you think are a big deal, but they're not. And look at what you've been able to do. And I remember in your book, you mentioned when you were diagnosed with that, I think there's a abbreviation for the
CRPS.
CRPS. Okay. So when you were told that that's what you had, I believe that you said, one of the doctors said, you need to stop. Like, you need to stop working out. You need to sit. You need to live a sedentary lifestyle. And
they
you were
told
like,
me
no.
I'd be wheelchair bound. They said,
Right.
I went in and they had told me it'd take me 2 years to walk again. And I really am grateful for the mentality that I had as an athlete to keep pushing and to get up and walk again. But I was on crutches about 4 months and I was in a lot of pain, but I was on crutches and I went in to see this doctor and he looked at me and he said, "You've got something very serious." He was like, "Are you the kind of girl that likes to push through pain?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, he can tell I've got a
Yeah.
PhD and suck it up. Yeah, look at me. I'm upright on crutches." And he goes, "You need to stop. You've got this nerve disease. You're going to be permanently disabled and you need to go home and get back in your wheelchair and stay there. You'll never work again. You're going to be, you'll probably have to wear orthopedic shoes." And I was like,
Right.
orthopedic shoes? Like, I am not going to wear orthopedic shoes.
No.
But it took a journey of learning that, yes, there's a time to push through pain, but I also learned the hard way that we have to listen to our body and learn to give ourselves
Oh,
grace
sure.
as well.
Oh, sure. And I do want to ask, so I know what your driving force was when you're sharing your message about taking care of your clients. And I'm sure that you also had a little bit of feedback from your family and from your husband and from your kids. Walk me through what they were saying to you during this time. It's like the doctors are saying you're never going to walk again. You need to rest. You need to take care of yourself. Just almost accept this diagnosis. And I mean, I have two little ones. They're not quite at the age of yours where, well, at the time, yours were very small as well.
Yeah.
And
My
so,
daughter was 2. My youngest daughter
yeah.
was 2. Yeah.
So
And
she wasn't really expressing anything yet, but you
I
had to take care of
remember,
her. So,
it was in the hospital, the nurses were incredible. I was in ICU. They were so scared of me getting any kind of infection because my leg was completely exposed. Like, it was crazy. Okay, you guys into fitness and you knowing anatomy, I this is kind of
right.
weird, but you might get this. So my leg was held together by these metal rods and it was completely open. And I remember looking in my leg and I was like, "Oh, wow, you can see the gastrocnemius and there's the soleus and this muscle striations." You could see the anatomy inside my leg. So part of me was fascinated with, wow, that's crazy. And the other part was like, I was in so much pain that my family couldn't even be in the room when they would come and strip the bandages off because I would hang on to the rails and scream. And it was the first time that I'd ever been away from my daughter. I didn't see her for 2 weeks and I had never gone even a whole day without seeing her. And
Yeah.
they said, "If you can get in your wheelchair, we can roll you out of ICU to see her." Well, every time I'd try to get in my wheelchair, my blood pressure would like shoot down, my heart rate would shoot up, all the buttons and everything, all the buzzards and bells
Yeah.
and whistles of she's about to go into cardiac arrest would go off. And they're like, you can't do this. And I was like, I need to see my daughter. The nurses cleared the hall and the nurses snuck in my 2-year-old in to see me. And I just, that moment was just like, oh, takes me back. And she looked, the first thing she said to me was, "Oh, Mama, boo-boo." And I was like, "Yeah, I have a boo-boo."
Yeah.
And she was scared to come in the bed with me because I looked so scary. I had metal rods holding my leg that was completely bandaged and bloody, and I was scraped up. And I think I lost about 20 pounds of muscle in the hospital. And I'd already started to atrophy by week 2. And I lured her into bed with me with fingernail polish and candy, and that's how I could get her to stay in the bed with me. And then after I got out of the hospital, my children were my driving force to keep moving forward. And there was one day I was laying in the hospital bed in our house, and I remember being in so much pain, and I couldn't even use a bathroom on my own, so I had a porta potty like next to the bed.
Yeah.
And the pain would get so bad that I would throw up and I'd be like, "How am I going to get through this?" And I would think to myself, what am I going to do? How am I going to get through this? what am I going to do about my clients? What am I going to do about the pain? And then I heard her voice. She was upstairs, and all I heard her do was call out mama. And in that moment, I realized I was asking myself the wrong questions. It's so important, the questions we ask ourselves. I needed to ask why. Because when I asked why I was going to get through this, when you ask why, it activates your human spirit. It activates your heart. It activates a power inside you that is just like a force of nature. And when I knew my why, that I was going to be an example of resilience for my daughters, and I was going to be the victim, not the victim, but the victor. Because it's easy to get into that victim role. It's easy to stay there. It's easy to be like, oh, poor is me, and have a pity party. But I was like, I'm not going to stay there. I'm going to show them what it's like to be the victor of my life. And so I learned how important it is to ask yourself the right questions, and how important it is to have a sense of purpose to get you out of bed, to get you moving forward. Even like this morning. So I've got a really eventful day. I've got a speaking event after this. I'm planning my first in-person event. So things are very eventful right now. And I thought, if I don't get up at 4:45 and get to the gym to get my workout, I won't have a chance to work out and move my body before my day starts. I woke up, and I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be real honest with you. I pushed snooze once. And because you know what? I'm not always motivated. People think I'm always motivated. My Instagram handle's Amberly Lago motivation. And I'm not always motivated. But I, in that moment, think when I'm pushed snooze, alarm went off again. I'm like, Amberly, why do you need to get up? And it was like, because I need to feel better mentally, physically. And so I need to get up, get my butt to the gym, move my body however I can, because it's going to energize me. It's going to release endorphins. It's going to combat pain. And so I think it's important, no matter what you're doing, if you focus on your why, you can get through anyhow. And it's also going to motivate you to keep moving forward.
Oh, definitely. And that's such an impactful message. I think at times, as a mom myself, we let things build up. Like, okay, we have too much on our plate today. We have too much work to do. We have after school activities, and you tell yourself, oh, well, getting my workout in isn't important today. All of these other things are more important. But actually, if you just carve out the 30, 45 minutes for yourself, it's going to make doing all of those other things so much easier.
Oh,
I found that out the hard way too. It's like, in this industry that I'm in, coaches need coaches sometimes. We're not always motivated. Like, we need people to push us and motivate us. And it sounds like to me, like your children and have been like one of your driving factors in motivating you to continue to show up for yourself.
Yeah. And you know what? Our kids, they watch what we do. They don't necessarily listen, but they watch. And
yes,
because even when I was in the hospital, now the doctors thought I was crazy, because I was like, okay, I'm stuck in this hospital. I'm going to need a pull-up bar installed over the bed. And they're like, okay, a pull-up bar. Because I couldn't get out of bed, but I was like, at least I can make my upper body keep it strong. And I asked one of the trainers from the gym to bring me some dumbbells, and he didn't think I was crazy at all. He was like, oh yeah, let me go get you some. And so in between surgeries, I was working out, doing what I could, not necessarily because I was like, I want to keep big muscles, because it made me mentally feel like I was moving in the right direction. It made me mentally feel like, okay, there is something I can control. I can control like my upper body strength and being able to lift myself up and use the bedpan on my own. The nurses loved me, by the way. They're like, she's the only one that can use the bedpan on her own. And, my daughters have seen me work out in a hospital bed. They've seen me work out in my wheelchair. They've seen me work out on crutches, on Canadian crutches, with a walker, back in the wheelchair, back in the hospital bed, walking on my own, with a limp, without a limp. They saw me, no matter what, sticking to what I said I was going to do. And now upstairs, we've got a little gym set up. My daughter is now 14, and she works out every single day. I mean, I don't tell her to work out. She has seen me do it, and she sometimes works out with me at the gym. But if we don't, she, like, what she wants for her birthday is a 45-pound bar. So a straight bar, so she can start doing squats like she wants to.
Oh
I'm
my
like,
gosh,
okay, so
that is awesome.
they are watching what we do and how,
They are.
yeah, they are. It's so important.
Yeah, one of the things I love that Ed Milet says is when talking about your kids, things are taught or things are caught, not taught. And my
Oh,
husband and I
yeah.
say that a lot because they can listen to what you're saying. My kids are so young, like they're 2 and 4. Like everything that they learn, they're just watching us. Like that's how they learn it. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not necessarily what we say, it's just our actions and our everyday moves and what we they can see what we value and they can see what we think is important by just what we're spending our time on during the day. And that's
And
why,
they see how we
yeah,
treat other people too.
right. Oh, definitely. Definitely.
And
I want to go back for it.
yeah, go
Oh, sorry,
ahead.
go ahead. Kind of touch on, many people today, we're convinced that our doctors know more than everybody. And we think that our healthcare system, it's like they're there to support us. But in reality, sometimes that's not always the case. And
Mm-mm.
you had a doctor say, okay, you have a 1% chance that you're going to walk again and you're not going to be able to save your leg. And you said, well, I'm going to go find another doctor. I'm going to go get a second opinion or a third opinion. And you just kept pushing because your why was so big that you were like, I'm not going to let this one person tell me this is how I'm going to live the rest of my life. You're not going to let them set the destiny in the future for the rest of your life. And I feel that we definitely live in a society where we just get one person to say, okay, you have this diagnosis, or this is what's wrong with you. And here, take these pills that's going to make it all better. And that's not always the case. So walk us through your mindset in that time, like how you were able to overcome what this person was telling you and say, nope, I'm going to go another direction and I'm going to find another way.
Well, it's interesting. When I wrote my book, the day that it published, I was interviewed on the Today Show, and I didn't know what questions they were going to ask me. I was so nervous. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm talking to Megyn
Yeah.
Kelly. And one of the questions she asked me was, she said, you woke up out of a coma, you had a 1% chance of saving your leg. She goes, why did you want to save it? And I was like, well, it was my leg. Like,
Right.
I was like, I ran. Running was my drug of choice. Like, it was my livelihood. It's what I loved. My nickname at the gym was Legs. I used to compete with the male bodybuilders because I was so strong. And so I was like, I want to keep my leg. And so my husband is the one, when I was in a coma, so he'll often say, well, you have 2 legs because of me, because when you were in a coma, they were just going to cut it off. And I'm like, thank you, honey. He
Yeah.
started Googling limb salvage, and he's the one that found another doctor, and he had to sign papers to get the other doctor to not amputate. And he found one trauma doctor that was a specialist, and it took like an act of God, a lot of pulling strings and knowing the right people to even get me transferred. But my husband, when I was in a coma, he told the doctor, he's like, no, you are not going to amputate her leg. I want that to be her decision. When she wakes up, I want her to wake up with both her legs, and I want it to be her decision. And so in me, I just had this driving force of, well, they can save my leg. I'm going to get back to doing the things that I love. And even when doctors told me, I remember being released from the hospital, and this one doctor, and I had some really incredible doctors, Dr. Wiss, who saved my leg, who I love. He's in my book. But I had this one doctor. I was so excited to be going home. And I said, oh, I can't wait to get back to training clients again and running again. And he goes, well, you're never going to run again, and you'll probably never even wear shorts again with all these scars. And that felt like a kick in the gut, but I used that as my biggest motivation. And I was like, oh yeah, you watch me. I am going to run again. And it took me 2 years, but I did run again on the beach, and I'd run and I'd fall and I'd get back up and run again. And I can run now. It's not pretty. but I can run, but it does flare up the CRPS. So I've found other ways of exercising. And I think that's part of being resilient is for a long time, it's easy to get stuck on, oh, wow, I can't do this or I can't do that. I remember, my youngest daughter loves to run and she was like, Mom, I want you to go for a run with me. And I looked at my husband and I said, it's such a shame that I can't run anymore. He goes, well, get on your bike and ride your bike beside her. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, I could do that. So I think part of being resilient is focusing on what you can do instead of what you can't do. Getting in a place of gratitude, which turns everything you have into more, which really gets you focused on what you can do, which gets you out of that victim mentality, which gets you focused on all the good things in life. And so I think gratitude is alchemy, and that's why I practice it every day. And I say practice because sometimes it's hard when you're going through a hard time to get grateful. But I promise when you do get grateful, it shifts your perspective. It shifts the way you feel about your circumstances or your situation. And it allows you to really be more resilient.
Definitely, definitely. And I think even at the end of some of the worst days that I've had, if you just spend a few moments asking yourself, what actually went great today? What did I accomplish today? Even if it's just one thing, it helps you just have a better outlook on how your day went and then to start a new day, like fresh.
Oh, yeah. My daughter and I she would be annoyed. She used to be annoyed at this, but every night when we get in the bed, I always say, what is the best thing that happened to you? And what is one thing that you're grateful for? And I know that it has really sunk in and she is grateful because she's able to, her and I actually were hit by a car. I know people are probably thinking, girl, you need to look both ways. But we were going through a crosswalk on our razors and a car went through the crosswalk and thankfully just hit us and we were thrown instead of rolled over. And in the hospital, and it was scary, but I want to keep this short and just tell you the lesson learned. Taken to the hospital, and in the hospital they let us share a hospital bed, and we were waiting for the CAT scan and stuff to get back for my daughter. And the whole time we were just saying, every time the doctor and the nurses came over, thank you so much for helping us. Thank you for taking care of us. Like, it could be so much worse. We're so grateful that it's not worse. We're grateful that we're here and you're taking care. And we left, 5 hours later, after being admitted to the hospital, we were released. And those doctors got us out of that hospital quicker, I swear, because we were so grateful and showed such appreciation for them. They were like, we're going to get you out of here as quick as we can. And we walked out of the hospital, and I knew that all this gratitude practice had really sunk in with my daughter, because we're walking out and she goes, Mama, we are so blessed. She goes, we got rolled in here on a gurney and we are walking out like rock stars, which is totally different. She could have been like, I got hit by a car and, I'm sore and it sucks. And she was like, so grateful to be walking out. And so gratitude really changes everything.
That is amazing. That's such a great message because as a mom, like you have done such an incredible job raising your daughter to have that level of resilience and accepting adversity. And now as she gets to be an adult and as she grows, she's going to find that most people aren't like that, but she is. And so she can then go practice that in her life and teach other people like, hey, I got in this accident. I could be moping around. Woe is me. But instead I'm looking at, oh, I was okay. I was taken care of. And now I'm going to just move on and live my life. And that's truly, I'm sure that makes you feel amazing as a mom, just to be able to pass that along.
Thank you so much. My kids are the most important thing to me. And as a result of my accident, my oldest daughter decided to go to medical school. So I never went to college, and she's in Yale. And so I'm real proud of her. And my youngest daughter she has become such a little athlete, and she's a horseback rider. And talk about grit. That girl has been bucked off, thrown off her horse, and she doesn't even take time to brush off the dirt anymore. She just hops back up and jumps back up on her horse. And so I think that as parents, we have the ability to really teach our children how to get through adversity and thrive, and how to tap into their own resilience. And it is a ripple effect of everyone you come across. I mean, everything we do affects how our resilience affects the people that we love, the people that we lead. People are watching. So whether they're watching you as a gym owner, as a trainer, as a mom, like, people are learning in your behavior. And so we have the ability to set a great example. And I mean, I'm not perfect. I screw up all the time, but I'm just doing the best that I can, and a lot of times people have nicknamed me the resilience queen. And I'm like, that's only because I have messed up. I have fallen. I have failed. I've been knocked down so many times. I've just learned how to get back up.
Right. Well, and I love that you have taken the time to share your story with so many others, and you wrote this book, and now you spread your message by, going on several stages a year and telling your story, because many people, they have a tragedy like this happen in their life, but then many people don't know about it. And so you're sharing the message with others to show what you went through and what you overcame, and how to then teach other people to do that. One thing I do want to ask you, because I know that this is a huge part of your life, is like your fitness and your nutrition, your workout routine. I want to talk about some daily habits that you have that kind of set you up for success, that, make you the person that you are today and able to do all of this.
Well, thank you for asking that. It's so important. I think that entrepreneurs sometimes start to let their healthy habits, I know I did, slip away a little bit. And I learned the hard way. I was letting my health go. There was one time I was in the emergency room 6 times in 1 year for an infection, because when I get run down, I can easily get an infection in my leg. And the doctor, not the nurse practitioner, the doctor in the ER was like, what is going on? Like, you've got to make a change. And it was a big wake up call for me. And so now I really think it's important for you to get back to basics. Like, I know this sounds so super simple, but I have to remind myself, and I have to put it in my calendar. Like, I have old school calendar that paper calendar I open up and look at. And I put in my calendar, like today, my workout this morning was written down in my calendar. I have to have my supplements and my drinks sitting on my desk, whatever. And everybody, what works for me may not work for you, but what works for me, and it may seem like a lot, but it's what keeps me sober. It's what keeps me thriving. It's what keeps me moving forward. Is I wake up every day, I move my body. First of all, I drink my drink that's a gut health supplement. I think it's so important to take care of your gut health. I move my body. I have a daily practice where I read out of like a daily reflections book. I pray. I have a gratitude practice that I do this. I have 3 other women that I do this with, and we write 10 things down in an app, and then we text each other what we're grateful for, because that helps me shift my perspective. And so I think it's really, and then I plan out my food, and I had to get back to, in California, there's a lot of healthy restaurants to choose from, but I just moved to Texas a year ago, and I'm kind of out in the country. I'm about 20 miles outside of Dallas. Let me tell you, there's not many food choices. So I've had to go back to food prepping like I did when I was a trainer. When I was a trainer, I would food prep all my stuff. So in between clients, I would have healthy stuff to eat. But after I was diagnosed with complex regional pain syndrome, I really had to change the way I eat. Like, I had to get rid of any inflammatory foods that, like sugar, alcohol, processed foods. And so I had a good friend of mine. She was like, she could see how much I was just pushing with grit, just hustle. And I kept getting sick. And she goes, Amberly, your impact is only as strong as you are healthy. And I heard that because it made me think of not just me, it made me think of the people that I want to serve. And so if you think about, like, if you have a hard time taking care of yourself, if you think about how it affects the people you serve, how it affects the impact you're going to make, how it affects your children, how it affects the kind of mom or wife or partner you can be, then maybe that'll help you really do the things. But I think it's important to know what your values are and to know what it is that makes you feel good and thrive and stick to those things, and for me, it's not just one thing. It's things that I can do physically, mentally, and spiritually that allow me to tap into my resilience and keep moving forward.
I love that. It's something that I say is your actions reveal your values. So like what you're spending your time on shows what you value in your day. And there's many people that say, oh, I value my health, but they're not actually taking care of themselves. And as you mentioned, entrepreneurs, it's like you start, even if you're in the health and fitness industry, you start to get so busy with your work and your clients. And then you realize, oh crap, I'm not even prioritizing my own health. Here I am helping them prioritize theirs, and I'm not doing that for myself anymore.
Yeah. And you know what? To me, I have to practice what I preach, or I don't feel good about telling other people to do the same. Even when I was a trainer, if I had a client that wanted to try some new fad thing like the fat flush diet or anything like that, I was like, okay, well, let me do it with you. Let me see how it is. You know what I mean? Because, and I would never have them try something, whether it was, an exercise or a recipe, if it wasn't something that I was doing myself. And another thing is entrepreneurs, like I mistook a lot of things. Like I mistook health scares as heroic acts. Like I remember pushing and pushing and pushing. And there was one time I was passing a kidney stone, and I still showed up to give this motivational talk at this company. What I learned is, I used to be really like, I was all about the grit. And what I really learned is when I was just focusing on the grit, what it meant was I was solely depending on myself to get things done, and I wasn't letting anybody in. I was building this wall up, and I was trying to kind of hide the pain, the shame, everything from other people. And what I learned from hitting the wall after doing that was grit without connection is resistance. So I know as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, sometimes it can feel lonely. You feel like you're the only one that gets how hard it is to run a business or to be in charge of so many clients or activities or things on your schedule. And what I learned is when you're trying to do it on your own, it just feels like quicksand, like you're clawing your way to try to reach the top. But when you have grit plus connection, that's where you find resilience. And that's why I'm so passionate about doing things with other people, like collaborating. That's why I started my own mastermind for female entrepreneurs. That's why I have in-person events so people can connect and really build relationships, and you don't have to do it on your own. It's like, you're strong on your own, but when you come together, that's when you become limitless. That's when you become unstoppable.
I love that so much. And I too believe that there's power in connecting with other people that are going through similar experiences as you. I personally am in a Fit Body Bootcamp mastermind. And before joining that, I was navigating owning multiple fitness studios alone and in motherhood. And I felt like I was the only one dealing with all of these things, all of these just life experiences that had never happened for me before. It was a first for
and
me.
It's
and
hard.
then when I started the mastermind, it is. And then, but when you find someone who gets it, it does help you build that resilience a little bit more, because you realize, okay, this person's either going through it right now or they've been through it and they've overcome, and they're going to help me do the same.
Heck yeah. And you know what? My good friend Greg Reed always says this. He says, seek counsel, not opinion. And the difference is when, like you owning studios, being a mom, doing all these things, if you were to go to another one of the moms from school or from daycare and who didn't work and try to explain to them and they tried to give you advice, they couldn't, because it's their opinion. They don't get it. But when you're in a mastermind with people who are doing the same thing, who are like-minded, who are passionate, they're into fitness, they're building and growing and scaling, they have counsel, they have experience, they have real guidance they can give you to scale your business, to move ahead, or just to go, oh my gosh, when you learn somebody that, like me too, there is such power when you can share what you're going through and they're like, oh yeah, I totally, I've been through that. This is how you get through it. And I mean, I'm a coach and I have a coach. Yesterday, I was texting my coach to ask him about this business opportunity that I was offered, to just get his advice. I'm a mentor and I have a mentor. I'm in a mastermind and I run a mastermind. I'm a sponsor and I've got a sponsee. And I think that, we're not meant to do it alone. And that's the thing, I thought for so long I had to do it alone. And I a lot of that was, I didn't feel like, I didn't want to be a burden, or I didn't feel like I was worthy of getting advice or getting in the room or getting in that mastermind. And it's like, wow, it changed everything when I realized that it's not just about the grit. It's about grit plus connection. And that is
definitely.
Yeah. And I think, imagine if more business owners got out of this mindset of, you just got to hustle, hustle, hustle. And when they met adversity, they didn't get into fight or flight, but they got into flow. Like flow, which really stands for, I'll tell you this real quick, frequency, love, optimism, and wonder.
I could have never said that any better. Thank you so much, Amberly. Well, I have enjoyed chatting with you today, and I know that our audience is going to get great value from this episode. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Amberly.